Hello and welcome to the James Granstrom podcast, Super Soul Model Series, where I help you tune and tap into your natural state of well-being. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about building courage and breaking out of your comfort zone. Right now on the planet, we're experiencing a lot of uncertainty. There's so much change going on, and sometimes it's very difficult to keep up with all the changes that are happening. And if you're quite empathetic, this can be quite a difficult period for you, meaning you might feel a little restless, you might feel that you don't know if you're coming or going. But even if you're not massively empathetic, you're noticing that there's a lot of change going on, and maybe you also need to make some changes right now as well. And if that's the case, then this episode is designed especially for you, because change really is the only constant that we ever have in life. And when I look back on my own experiences and my own challenges and my own life path as it's unfolded, it's always when times have been tough or there's been adversity that change has happened, and that change has gone on to prove to be very fruitful and even very beautiful, even though in the face of change it was very, very difficult. And so if you're feeling any challenge right now, if you're feeling any doubt, if you're feeling any fear, feeling any anxiety about moving forward, or you're feeling any uncertainty, then building courage is going to be really important for you so that you can break out of any patterns that you're finding yourself in and step out of your comfort zone into a life you really, really want and deserve. And the question here that you have to really ask yourself is, why do I deserve an even better life? Because most people only settle for what they have when you could really settle for a lot more. So if you want a lot more and you believe you deserve a lot more, and if you're listening to this, that means you do deserve it, then it's time for you to make a few changes. It's time for you to break out of any patterns that you found yourself in that have made you comfortable. And it's time for you to really step into a new version of yourself, create a new identity, and make some changes, because this is a really good time of the year to start making some changes. And I'm hoping that this episode will give you a little hope so you can be courageous enough to go after what you really, really want, because until you go after what you want, sometimes it's just not going to fall on your lap. So sometimes you really need to take action steps towards it. Winston Churchill said this quote, and I really like this quote about courage. He said, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak, but courage is also what it takes to sit still and listen." And this means you need to be able to change your character. It means you need to build your character up. And being courageous requires character, it requires attitude, it requires something inside of yourself, like a burning desire to want more, desire more, and believe you can have it. Because if you don't believe you can have it, you're just going to settle for what you already have. And some people just do that and they live their entire lives like that. But if you really want more and you really deserve more, then what it's going to take is it's going to take a new version of yourself showing up every single day. It's going to take new actions. It's going to take building new habits for sure. And it's going to be requiring a new level of character from you. Life's going to be trialing and testing you from time to time. Even though it's not actually testing you, what you're actually doing is drawing out of yourself what you didn't know was in there all along. Maybe it's strength for sure. Maybe it's your ability to handle difficult situations. Maybe it's for you to triumph after some form of adversity. I know firsthand what it feels like to want to not make any more mistakes, because I felt I'd made an entire lifetime. But if I didn't make those mistakes, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be, I like to think, a little bit more well-rounded. And because all mistakes really help you develop a character, it helps you develop strength, it helps you develop what you need to actually succeed in this world. And if you're afraid to make any mistakes, you're never going to really succeed in this life. You need to be able to make choices, and you need to make mistakes. And you need to realize that those mistakes will either serve you by learning from them about what not to do so that you can make the right choices. Ultimately, they're only choices. And the better choices you make, the better life becomes and the easier it becomes. But it's not always easy making certain choices, because sometimes you have to let people down, or sometimes you have to say no. But you've got to be courageous enough to stand up for what you believe in. And if you want more and deserve more and want to achieve certain goals, then it's really important that you have the courage to stand up for yourself. So in this episode, what I want to do is I want to give you 3 things. I want to help you dare something worthy. Because if you have something that is way bigger than you and you are going for it in terms of a goal, and it's something worthy of your attention, it's worthy of your energy, it's worthy of your commitment, then that's going to impact not only you, but a lot of people in the long run. Number 2, I also want to give you a simple action plan you can follow, and it's so simple. And I want you to be able to take this away and apply this strategy to your goals and desires. And last but not least, I want you to feel hopeful that your goals and dreams are possible for you. Because sometimes we can feel overwhelmed or not even believe that what we want is actually out there or even possible for us. And I want in this episode to be able to help you believe that, do you know what? If this can work for someone else, it can work for you too. And all it takes is for you to show up time and time again. Now, it's going to require effort. It's going to require sacrifice. It's going to require energy. It's going to require focus. But most of all, it's going to require commitment. And when you really decide that you want more and you want to settle for more, and you really mean it with sincerity, the universe will part like the Red Sea to be able to help you cross into this new land of opportunity. But if you don't really mean it, if you're not sincere, it won't part. The Red Sea won't part for you. So you really need to be really sincere in your intention for this to actually work for you. So what is your comfort zone? Your comfort zone is a little place of homeostasis where you're secure and safe and sound right now. And sometimes that's a really good place to be. However, if you stay too long in this little zone, what happens is discontentment sits in. What happens in this place is a feeling of unfulfillment sets in. And that energy can really disrupt your nervous system, can really disrupt your relationships, can really disrupt your work, because you're just too comfortable and you're not growing. Because there are 3 tenets to your well-being: freedom, growth, and joy. And now, if you're feeling joy in your work and in your life, that's amazing. If you're feeling a sense of freedom and adventure because you've got more than enough money, you've got freedom to travel, you've got freedom in your physical form to enjoy great energy and movement, and that feels fantastic. But if you're not growing, if you're not evolving, unfulfillment sets in and discontentment sets in. And I remember a time when I was feeling discontent because my life was really comfortable, but I wasn't growing yet. I really wanted more, but I wasn't prepared to do anything about it. This was sitting in a comfort zone, and that actually led to some real challenges for me, some real adversities. But I blessed them because that discontentment really helped me get out of this comfort zone. So sometimes life will force you out of a comfort zone because you really need to grow. And your comfort zone is a nice place to be for a short amount of time, but not for a long period of time. Most people in their lives tend to exist around their comfort zone, and that comfort zone is not something extraordinary, not something amazing, but some people just like that. However, they often say that most men lead quiet lives of desperation, meaning they're just getting by because they're a slave to a program or system of working their way up through the corporate ladder, having a family, etc., etc., and then they die with unfulfilled dreams. There's an analogy that people say that the graveyard is a place where most dreams have died with the people because they've never gone after their dreams. And so don't let that be you. Be somebody who actually goes for their dreams, who goes after them. Because when you look back and you've actually taken risks and gone for your dream, and maybe you've succeeded, or maybe you've even failed so many times, but eventually, if you just don't quit on yourself, and most people quit on themselves, but if you don't quit on yourself, it's almost as if Like, you're going to knock on so many doors, and eventually one door will open for you. And you'll be so proud of yourself for not quitting on yourself. And the self-pride, the self-satisfaction, and the fulfillment, and also what that will do and affect other people because of your energy of persisting in yourself, not quitting on yourself. That is true courage. And sometimes people need to experience so many setbacks in life to only just get back on their feet again, because they become stronger and stronger through the process. And sometimes we need to develop the strength to become the character that we can be in order to serve the people and help the people, and maybe bring a business into light, or a book, or a creative work of art. So many stories that I could share with you that are about people experiencing adversity and coming back from that. So I want to tell you a story about Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone has got a very interesting story about how he made Rocky, and Rocky won an Oscar. And it's all about a guy who gets knocked down or put down in life, only to come back and have an opportunity to fight the world champion, and not only fight the world champion but also beat him. Now, this is a true underdog story, but what I really like about this story is what you don't know about Sylvester Stallone before he became a big famous movie star was that he was dead broke, and he actually had to sell his dog in order to get enough food and pay his rent. And his beloved dog, he was like absolutely devastated to be parted with him, but he didn't have the money. But in the meantime, what he had done is he'd been writing a script for 3 days straight, and he managed to get this script in front of a few people who wanted to buy it off him. And he swore to himself, if I ever manage to sell this script, I'm going to get my dog back. And he wrote this script with the intention that he would star in it. And these studio bosses came around, loved his script, were inspired by the script, thought the script was amazing, but they didn't want Sylvester to star in the film. They wanted other people. And they were prepared to offer him $80,000 in order to buy this script. And given that Sylvester Stallone was dead broke, that $80,000 would have been literally amazing. But Sylvester Stallone bet on himself. He had the courage to say, no, I want to star in this film, and I want to be Rocky. And they were like, the studio boss was like, no. We're going to have a proper movie star as the main role as Rocky. He goes, no, I've written it for me. And somehow, because the studio bosses liked the script so much, they offered him a much lower offer, something really, really low, in order to be able to buy that script. But with Sylvester starring as the main role, so that they wouldn't take a big risk on Sylvester if the movie plummeted. But what Sylvester did do is he offered in that he would have the rights to own the movie if it was a success. And so the studio bosses agreed, bought the script for a much, much lower price, and Sylvester immediately went to buy his dog back, which also stars in the film. But what people don't realise is that film actually made Sylvester Stallone, and because he had the rights to it, he made an absolute fortune, and it went on to win an Oscar. So that is courage when you have no money. That is courage about writing something creative that can uplift people, because stories uplift people, scripts uplift people, books uplift people, works of art uplift people, music uplifts people, starting a business uplifts people. It doesn't matter what your creative outlet is, but what matters is that you believe in yourself and you keep going until something happens. And you've got to turn up with this self-belief, even though you're going to get knocked down. And Sylvester Stallone was really knocked down in that price, but he believed in himself. He had the courage to go forwards, and he had the courage to write this even though he had absolutely nothing. And when you look at old musicians and bands that were starting musically who came from nothing and had nothing but just had a dream, they had to have the courage in order to start this energy rolling that doesn't exist yet, where you are succeeding and you're thriving. Oasis comes to mind when I think of this. The Beatles come to mind when I think of this. Most bands have this same premise. They don't have the financial backing, but they just have this dream. They have the dream of performing. And you see it time and time again. But what in order to get there, you need to have the courage to be able to stand up for yourself, believe in yourself, and keep moving forwards even when nothing is happening. So all success really happens based upon you taking risks and being prepared to fail. And if you fail, you just learn. And part of winning and part of succeeding is failing along the way, so you know what to do and what not to do. So a little case study for me where I've failed time and time again is just in this new sport that I play. It's called paddle tennis. And for 5 weeks straight, transitioning from regular tennis to paddle tennis, I came in feeling pretty cocky, feeling pretty chuffed with myself in order to play on a court that's significantly smaller and shorter than a tennis court, only to be humbled time and time again on this court by other people, and some people who didn't even look that fit, who didn't even look that well. So I was like really humbled by this experience of playing paddle, because the ball bounces off the glass, a bit like squash meets tennis, so to speak. So I remember beginning my paddle career and losing like 3 times a week for 5 weeks straight, and I was literally getting disappointment after disappointment, until one day I realized I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to play that shot anymore. I'm not going to hit the ball like that. And when I did do that, I won the next game. I won one of my matches, the first in 6 weeks, and I was literally so happy and surprised. But I was willing to take those 18 games, which was roughly 5 weeks, 3 times a week, of taking it on the chin, being humbled time and time again, in order to learn the lesson about what not to do so that I could make the right choices. And that's a bit like a microcosm of life, of going after what you really want, having the courage to go after what you want, breaking patterns, stepping outside of your comfort zone. I was lucky enough to be able to be playing with a bunch of guys who were significantly better than me, but I was willing to fail time and time again in order to win eventually. And I knew that if I just stuck at it, I knew that maybe I'd figure this out. And that could be the same for anything. That could be the same of changing your work. That could be the same as changing your body. That could be the same as making a huge change in your financial life. All of this requires you to do something different from what you've always done, because if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get the same results. This is lunacy. This is madness. So I found myself doing that years ago, and when I started doing things differently, started going to seminars, started reading different books, I started changing my mind and my focus, and little by little I started to grow, and I started to change, and I started to evolve. I remember being so dissatisfied with my work at one point that I knew I had to do something completely different. It was literally like I had an undercurrent of discontentment in my life the whole time. And I was like, this does not feel right. I feel like I'm at the other end of the phone waiting for my agent to ring, when I want to be in charge of my life. And I want that to be you. I want you to feel like you're in charge of your life. You're not at the mercy of someone else's decision to say yes. And it's only when you step up and acknowledge yourself and you go towards something that you want that your life will change. And that takes courage, that takes discipline, that takes grit. And it takes risk, and it takes failure and knockbacks and setbacks. And you've got to be really uncomfortable in those moments, because when you're uncomfortable and you don't know what to do, you're actually beginning to grow, because you have to think differently. You have to get into your mind. The reason why people settle in their comfort zone is because it's a bit like driving. Once you know how to drive, you just know how to do it. Your learned application of how to drive is stored in the body. And so that means you don't have to use mind in order to be able to have to drive. It's just automatic. It's in your subconscious. It's very much like if you can speak a language fluently, it's just in there. You know how to do it. But when you are wanting something new that you've never experienced, when you are wanting something new, maybe like a big pile of money, a change in your income, a change in your business, a change in your environment, maybe a change in your relationships, maybe a change in your health and vitality, that means you have to learn. That means you have to step into the theatre of the mind and start thinking differently. And people find that very difficult because it requires effort, it requires discipline, but most of all, it requires repetition. So your comfort zone will test you time and time again. How comfortable will you choose to be every single day? Because what you want is on the other side of your comfort zone. And the sooner you realize that, the easier this whole process becomes, because what you want that isn't yet here is on the other side of your comfort zone, meaning you have to start taking new actions, new thoughts, and create new habits that are different from what you do in order to experience what you really want. This is why the rags to riches story is always fascinating, because it means people have to use their mind in order to create something, a vision, and then go after it with action, because we live in this 3D world. Action is what brings thought into matter. So we need to have a vision, of course, but we also need to be able to take action, and that action will always be something risky, something that you haven't yet done, that you are unfamiliar with, but will take you on a new path, on a new trajectory with different results. If you're afraid of making any mistakes, then you're never going to really achieve something you really have your heart on. You're never going to achieve something wonderful that you really desire if you're afraid of making mistakes. I used to be afraid of making mistakes, but after a while I just thought, well, if I make them, it happens. When I first started the podcast, the editing wasn't great and the sound wasn't great and the quality wasn't great, but I was passionate about it. And little by little, it's gotten better over time. The people I've managed to speak to have been amazing over time, and the doors of opportunity that have come as a result of being prepared to make some failures, making some mistakes, but just charging forward anyway, have been incredible. And if it weren't for me stepping up and being able to do that, I wouldn't be as satisfied as I am now with what I'm doing and what I'm sharing. And I just want you to think that anything is possible if you show up for yourself and you commit yourself, because that personal growth is absolutely priceless. Growth may be painful, but on the other side of that growth is huge, unlimited possibility. And that's where you want to live, and that takes courage. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to grow, because with that comes something so incredible. But the key things here is you need to commit, and you need to be consistent, and you need to be repetitive time and time again, because repetition is how eventually learned skills will drop into the subconscious, very much like learning how to drive. I live in Spain right now, and I'm always trying to practice speaking Spanish, and I understand that it will take time, but I'm not afraid to make mistakes and get things wrong and be corrected by my friends and the locals, and I really appreciate that. So think of it that way, that if you do get things wrong, people will still try and correct you, and see that as a little blessing, because when you commit and you really knuckle down, the universe will bring you loads of gifts, because it will say, you really mean it, you've got sincerity, and sincerity will help you break out of your comfort zone when you really mean it and you really want something and you really want your circumstances to change for the better. So when do you need to step outside your comfort zone? You need to step out of that comfort zone when things in your life and in your business or in your relationships just seem same. You need to do something different. You need to mix things up. You need to try new things. You need to take some risks, because unless you do, that momentum is just going to be really dead. That's the time for you to change. That's the time for you to take risks. Number two, another time to do it is when you're feeling discontent or you're feeling a sense of dissatisfaction with what you're doing in your work. Your work contributes to about 33% of your life. And if that, for one reason or another, is dissatisfying, you need to deal with that very quickly. And that means you need to take some risks in order to change that work, because if you're happy in your work, you're going to be happy in your life, because that's about 33% of your life where you're focused your energy. So you don't want to go to work just to make money. You want to go to work, make happy money, and be really satisfied and passionate with what you're doing. And if you're not feeling that, then it's time to take some risks and get outside your comfort zone and start thinking differently, because nothing's going to change until you change the way you're looking at the situation and maybe changing your circumstances positively. And the last but not least, another time to step outside your comfort zone is when what you've planned and what you're wanting is not showing up. It means that you're probably not taking the right action right now. It means that you're probably not taking enough risks. Because if you're not taking any risks, you're not getting any rewards. All reward comes from taking risk, but you want to take calculated risks where you're pursuing something that feels really good to you, that excites you, that enthuses you, that gives you passion. Maybe it's a side hustle. You've got to commit to something that empowers you and that will help other people, because the universe likes to operate in win-wins. And when you're sharing something that's going to contribute to a greater level of humanity, or greater benefit to nature, or greater benefit to society in some kind of way, then that's a beautiful thing where the universe will also work hand in hand with you. But if you do the same thing over and over again, you're only going to get the same results. You've got to do something different when you're not attracting what you really want. I remember when I wasn't attracting my big goals or my vision board, and I thought to myself, why is that not happening? It was because I was taking no action. So I had to start doing something differently. And so that's when I set up this podcast 4 years ago. And as a result, amazing things have happened. Even though at the beginning I wasn't getting paid, even though it was all for free, even though it was all my own money that I was investing into this, it was still worth it. And it will be for you if you turn up with something that you can share. In my case, it's being able to share candidly my story, candidly my mistakes, and the solutions that have helped sort my life and change it on a new trajectory and brought me greater health, greater wellness, greater prosperity, greater abundance, greater happiness, greater relationships, and greater inner strength and greater inner peace. That is what I'm wanting to share, and that's why I set this podcast up in the first place. So whatever your meaning is for you, you've got to think, are you prepared to go after what you want, even though at the beginning there will be nothing? It might take a year, it might take 2 years, it might take 5 years. But if you pursue something and commit to it, definitely going to work out. So what are the 3 steps to be able to break out of your comfort zone? The first step is this: you just got to know what you want. You've got to have clarity. You've got to first get the clarity about what you want, and then you've got to learn how you can do it. And in my experience, when I first started wanting to learn about the body, I wasn't necessarily in great shape. I learned how to get fit. I joined a 12-week program by Bill Phillips called Body for Life. And I did this religiously for 12 weeks. I learned what to eat. I learned what exercises to do. I learned what weights to lift. I learned what cardio to do. And I educated myself. And after 3 months, I got myself in amazing shape. And that was the first time. But that clarity of knowing what I wanted helped me get the physical form I wanted, which would help me in modeling. So that was my why. But also when I wanted to become financially secure, I started investing. I learned everything I possibly could about investing and learning how to manage my money. So I joined a millionaire's course called T. Harv Eker Millionaire Mind Intensive, just to learn about money and how to look after it. And I read all the Rich Dad Poor Dad books about investment. And then I had to literally apply what I learned. And that took years to be able to apply. But when I did, it gave me that security. And so if you want anything to change, you've got to get clear about what you want, and then you've got to learn about it and then apply. That's the first step. The second step to being courageous and breaking out of your comfort zone is getting uncomfortable every day. And one of the first things I like to do is have a cold shower. That makes me uncomfortable every single day. I either jump in the cold pool or I have a cold shower. But either way, when I'm doing that, I'm telling myself that I'm prepared to go beyond the comfort of the mind and that homeostasis, to be uncomfortable, to start to feel that I can go beyond what my mind says, which is make me comfortable here. And that's really empowering. And then the second thing is, if you're trying to change your business, for instance, if you're running an online business, you've got to post something every day. If you're sharing a podcast, are you posting a podcast every week? I posted a podcast every week for 2 years straight, and then I started getting loads of clients, so I started doing it every other week, which I found a lot more manageable with all the other stuff that I had going on in my life and all the creative projects and all the clients that I started attracting. So you've got to be consistent, you've got to be regular. And are you sending emails, or are you practicing that music every single day, or are you working out? You know, if you're wanting to become fit, are you developing the skills? Are you learning the language every single day? Because as you start to do things repeatedly every single day, you begin to change your neural circuits in your brain, and you start to grow. And this is when you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. Since my father died and I've been looking after my mum, I've been highly uncomfortable in the whole process, but I've learned so much, and that has given me so much strength. And even now we are selling the villa and my mum's going back to the UK, I've decided that I'm going to stay for another 3 months, and I'm going to look for my new client base nearby, because I feel that there's so much opportunity. And even though it's uncomfortable, I'm actually going to relocate, and that's stepping outside of my comfort zone. And I'm happy that I'm doing that, because it feels exciting and it feels risky, and I know on the other end of that something amazing's going to happen, or something is happening as a result of just understanding this principle. And so you just have to decide that your dream life is worthy of your energy and dedication. And the third step, the last step, is this, is you've got to keep going. You've got to keep showing up for yourself, even when nothing's happening, even when the phone isn't ringing, even when you're not receiving any emails, even when there's no evidence or driftwood happening in your life right now. You've got to keep that sail up. You've got to keep going. You've got to keep moving forwards, because when you do, what you're actually saying is, I believe, I'm believing in myself, even though I see no evidence of it. And eventually things will come, driftwood will come, and you'll catch a little glimpse of, yeah, maybe this is going to work out. And you'll start to be a little bit more optimistic. And last but not least, I wanted to say this in this third step, is you've got to keep positive, and you've got to keep imagining things unfolding for you perfectly. Seeing that end goal working out, beautiful, you being in that beautiful new home, that beautiful new villa, having that amazing car, having that amazing relationship, being in your dream job, having that fantastic body, whatever it is, imagine yourself in that, because your imagination takes you everywhere. And you've got to remain positive. And if you're not positive, one of the best ways to keep positive is to practice this little thing which says, what if it's going to work out? What if this is going to work out? What if I keep going? And what if this all works out? This is a wonderful little redirection of the mind, asking a good question that will help you feel a little bit more optimistic, even on those days when nothing's happening. Anyway, lots to think of there in order to tap into your courage, lots to think of in there in order to break out of your comfort zone. Like I mentioned earlier, your dreams are on the other side of your comfort zone, and if you're prepared to throw yourself over that fence and see what's on the other side by taking some risks and not being afraid to fail time and time again, and get yourself up, dust yourself off, go again, time and time again, you'll be so surprised what life has in store for you. I guarantee you it will be something phenomenal. But you've got to bet on yourself. Don't let the world think that it's going to deliver to you on a silver platter what you want. You have to go out there and work towards it. You've got to walk towards it, because if other people have achieved it, you can as well. And what if you follow through on your own plans? What if you start making an action plan towards something that you want to bring into your life? Because nothing will change until you do. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and until the next time, I wish you a wonderful week ahead, and green lights all the way.